Hey all, FilthyRobot here, doing another Darkest Dungeon 2 early access deep dive into the Occultist class. Let's get started. Talking about stats and skills to begin with, followed by the specialties of the class, and then a summary of what I think of it as a whole. So let's get into it. 34 HP on the low end, but a character that's pretty happy in position 3 or 4. 5 speed on the fast end. The Occultist is a squishy class. And the Occultist sometimes wants to play in position 2, and the 34 HP with no real survival mechanics is very noticeable in position 2. So if you are going to do something like that, I had a run where I had a evasion, whatever the evasion quirk on the Occultist was, and that was awesome. The one that starts you with 2 stacks of upgraded evasion was just upgraded dodge rather, was so good on the Occultist. It let them play position 2 and just excel there as opposed to getting kind of deleted there. So a squishy character for sure. The resists are pretty average. 30 bleed, 30 blight are standard resists, 40 burns a little above, 20 stuns a little low, 20 movements on the low end, 40% debuff is pretty good, and 40% disease is pretty good. So decent resist profile, not super vulnerable to dots, which is good because they're very squishy, and not super vulnerable to diseases or debuffs as well, so that's kind of nice. Looking at the skills, Sacrificial Stab. I haven't liked this ability at all. This is their basic auto attack. It is a kind of low-end attack, but with no rider effects that are particularly good on it. So it has high crit chance, but it doesn't do good consistent damage. The upgrade is another 1.5, but it's tilted towards the top end a little bit. It has the ability of gaining. So Occultist, it has a unique ability called Empower. Empower is a stacking buff. You can have, like all other buffs, you can have up to 3 ticks of it on you. And the Occultist has inherent payoff abilities related to Empower. So some of their skills cannot be used without a certain number of Empower stacks on them. It's a really cool mechanic. And Empower sometimes, the other thing about Empower is it also has a chance to apply a burn dot to you, basically. But anyways, so Sacrificial Stab. If you attack a target with combo, you gain a stack of Empower, and if you kill a target with the upgraded Sacrificial Stab, you also gain a stack of Empower. So you could potentially attack a comboed target and kill it and get 2 stacks of Empower. Now, Empower generation is very good on the Occultist if you build it for the Empower payoff build. However, I have not found this to be a very consistent way of generating Empower. You need 2 stacks. So if you aren't doing something else, the combo gaining 1 isn't very good. It just essentially puts a chance to burn yourself while stealing your combo point, which isn't great. If you're spending multiple turns using Sacrificial Stab, that's pretty painful. And if you're at the part in the fight where you get your first Empower stack, your first stack of 2 Empower by actually killing a target with a weak attack, it feels like that's kind of win more to me. So I haven't found Sacrificial Stab to really hit that sweet spot of enabling me to use the other abilities in a meaningful way. All right, Abyssal Artillery. I like this ability. I like it all around. It's pretty decent damage. You know, if we're talking these damage, 3 to 6, on a single target, not very exciting. On 2 targets, starting to get quite a bit better. The back rank threats, I'm thinking of Drummer, aren't very tanky, so that's kind of nice. Or like the imps, the cherubs, I guess, in the cultist fights, for example. I often use this to burn stacks of either evasion or block from opponents because I get 1 good hit and 1 half hit, which is fine. And the upgrade is fairly interesting. The upgrade goes up in crit, up in damage, and then gives me a 25% chance to apply a combo. And if I'm already empowered, it's a stun. And that's crazy. Empowered stunning is great. If you can stun 2 targets, there's only like 2 things in the game that do that. Yop, which requires both targets be combo pointed already, or the much more obtainable goal of having Empower on yourself to throw out 2 stuns. I think Artillery is quite good. Now, there's an issue that I don't often want the Occultist to be utilizing. I mean, it's okay. There's some issues with target selection, essentially. You don't always find 3-4 targets that you need to do damage for, but when you are using it, I think this ability has been really solid for me. It's actually overperformed what I'd expect it to do. All right, moving on. Weakening Curse. This is my least favorite. Okay, so this is my lesser favorite of the 2 curses that the Occultist has access to. I think this has been fine for me. Applying a combo point makes it a lot better. The first version of it, the problem is the Occultist has so many good skills that I rarely can fit this on my bar. Weakness as a status effect is decent. And definitely if you spend an action applying it, you definitely want 2 stacks instead of 1. I don't think removing crit is a very relevant ability yet. Maybe we'll find a bunch of fights where crit is super dangerous on the opponent. There are some crit generation in the cultist fights already. The cultist, not the occultist fights, the enemy cultist fights. But by and large, that hasn't been a very useful thing to me. However, applying a combo point off of a weakness effect is very useful. It's too bad combo points don't stack, but the upgraded version of this is much better than the non-upgraded version for sure. Moving on, Weird Reconstruction is the kind of, if you are Darkest Dungeon 1 fans, this is the class-defining thing of the Occultist in Darkest Dungeon 1, which is the heal numbers are variable. And he can heal you for 0 and dot you and sometimes kill you. Hilariously, they've somehow managed to make this, in my opinion, worse than it was in the first game. And it was pretty bad in the first game. So now you can't just heal somebody whenever. You can only heal them when they're low. And it's at less than 33%, which is real low. The heal is still decently sized at 0 to 33 or 0 to 50 on upgrades. And the dot does get weaker. It's a 3-point dot to start with only 50% application rate. And it goes down to 2, which is even weaker later. But it is limited in the number of times you can use it, and it's really hard to cast this ability. I've actually found that this ability is so bad that I mostly don't run it anymore. Like sometimes I'll leave it on the bars just like an emergency thing, but I don't like this ability. And the Occultist has lots of other good abilities now to a point where I pretty much don't have to run this because it's so bad. It's so inconsistent. It's so difficult to figure out a situation where it's actually helpful for. And there's so many other better sources of healing. So I don't like this ability and pretty much don't use it at this point. All right. But to be fair, this is one of the, I go for consistency so that my comps will survive bad RNG. And this is one of these abilities that just punishes you if your RNG is bad, right? You lose the run right off the bat from something like that. All right, moving on. Demon's Pull. This ability is really good. It's really good for a couple reasons. Mostly, it's fairly flexible. You can use it in position 2, 3, 4. It has okay damage. 2 to 5 is on the low end, but it's not 1 to 2, right? So you're still doing something while doing something useful. It does move opponents. There's a couple opponents that we're aware of that their weaknesses are from being moved. A lot of the opponents' abilities are still hidden, but I'm thinking like the fights versus the brigands, particularly the brigand mortar guy, like moving him regularly is quite helpful to pull forward 2 or pull forward 3. And it applies combo. So you sometimes get like the really nice efficiency of pulling a dangerous enemy forward and applying combo points for future points, people doing it, and getting a little bit of damage and clearing corpses, which are all fairly useful effects stacked into one. So I like this ability. I haven't had a lot of reason to upgrade it. Certainly stunning off of Empower is a nice effect, I guess, but we have lots of other Empower payoffs, and I haven't found Pull 3 to be much different than Pull 2, and the damage of going up +1 really doesn't seem that relevant to me. So mostly I like this because it's an early skill that I can use before a lot of the Occultist skills are only good after the Mastery, and this is one of the skills that early game on Occultist I almost always have equipped, and later game I often take off once I've mastered the other skills and made them playable. And because it's just, this is decent, doesn't require upgrades, doesn't require investment, and later can be replaced by other things. But I really like this skill. I've been really pleased with how it's performed. Vulnerability Hex is really, really good. There's quite a few enemies that generate dodge, sometimes multiple stacks of dodge. And this not only removes all of the stacks of dodge, but it applies a vulnerability on top of that. So you get kind of double dipping out of this, make it so your future attacks are going to hit that character and they're going to hit harder at the cost of 1 action from you, which is pretty good efficiency. If you get double Vone out of it, once you upgraded it, it's even more efficient, which makes it much more fun for me. And then it can be used from any position to any position. Overall, this ability has just overperformed for me. I really like it. There's a lot of enemies that have dodge in the current iteration of the game. And this might go down in value over time in something like what is it? This one? Something like the crit removal might go up in value over time as we find more enemies who have these status effects. But right now there's plenty of dodge status effects and not a lot of crit status effects. And this has been great for me. All right, moving on. Binding Shadows. This feels like it shares a lot of similarities with Sacrificial Stab to me, what it's trying to do and what utilizes it. It has the interesting effect of being forward 1, so it has a movement effect built into it. Really similar damage, 3 to 6 and 4 to 8 compared to 3 to 6, 4 to 8, literally identical damage. I think it's slightly lower crit rate. Yeah, it is slightly lower crit rate over here. But it's doing a very similar thing, which is it's trying to build you Empower off of like medium to low amounts of damage that also build Empower. And this one starts to sweeten the deal a little bit by giving you a movement effect. Now, the problems are that this is chance-based, and I really don't like something like what is it? It's max variance at a 50-50 chance of something, right? So it's least predictable its outcome, essentially, by being a 50-50 like this. So I don't like high variance abilities by and large because they're difficult to plan around. So this, I lose some enjoyment of this skill from that. That said, enabling this has that one extra thing. The forward movement is worth something because it enables other things on your team, so you can get value out of that in a way that you can't out of Sacrificial Stab. Now, they both get the combo, a point when combo, although it takes the upgrade on Binding Shadows to do that, so it's a bit more expensive to do that. But I think I prefer, by and large, enabling another skill on another teammate compared to having to kill a target for empowering generation. Now, the truth of it is, up till now, I'm pretty much not using either of these skills. So I'd have to find the comp that really benefited from that forward movement. But the empowered abilities on the Occultist are really good. So presumably empowered buff builders are going to be valuable to us long-term when we play Occultist. All right, Malediction. So this is one of the Empower payoffs. This has not been my favorite of the Empower payoffs. It's been my least favorite, in fact. But it's potentially quite strong. So it is a... Oh, it's not even as good as I thought it was. Okay, it's slightly different than I thought it was. Okay, so what it's doing here is it's a nuke. You attack a target with it. You can attack from any position to any other position, so it's quite flexible what it can hit. And when you do hit the thing, you put either a 1 point dot of three, so either a 3 point dot of 3 different types or a 2 point dot of 3 different types. Now, 2 problems with this. One, the Occultist doesn't have a lot of bleeds, blights, or burns, so the Occultist rarely is itemized to do this. 2, the Occultist doesn't have a ton of AoE abilities. There's actually only 2, the Abyssal Artillery and the one we're going to be talking about in a minute, like Amnesis or something like that. Anamnesis or something like that, some weird name that you never use in regular parlance. But anyways, point being that to utilize an ability like this well, you want to hit lots of targets and you want to have a good application chance of the dots, and you want the fights to go on long so you can get full value out of all these dots. And those things don't really reflect how the Occultist works. The Occultist doesn't do lots of attacks, doesn't have lots of AoEs, and the AoEs they do have compete with skills like this that all require Empower to be particularly useful. So maybe we could get some value out of this with Abyssal Artillery and some really strange fights, but I doubt it because so think about it this way, right? 3 dots each get a chance to get resisted. Most of the enemies have one area that they're particularly resistant in. So you might be able to, let's imagine this was just a 6 point dot for like one of these effects. Maybe then you could bring it you might bring the burning dot versus a guy who is really weak versus burning and have a good chance to apply it. But most of the things you're fighting that have lots of HP and are like boss fights or elite fights are gonna have a pretty good resistance. You're probably losing one of these already. I just haven't found the payoff of this to be worth it. And then there's my favorite term ever on this channel, the opportunity cost of using this skill, because it uses your Empower stacks, and there are much better payoffs for Empower. And let me talk about those. This is one of them. This doesn't have the problems of the last one. It is a single type of dot, so you can go against the person who's weak to bleed resist, and you can have a bleed resist application item in a way that you don't have to have applications of 3 others. Now, there is one trinket that gives you application for all 3, but it's a weaker amount compared to the single target applications of that. And this is a position 1-2 only, so it does have a bit more restrictive casting requirements, but it hits all four slots and applies a pretty significant bleed, especially at rank 2, a 4-point bleed to all 4 slots, which is a really nice payoff. Now, a bit slow to get going. The earlier you apply the dots in fights, generally the more value they're going to get from them, especially in shorter fights where you might not get the full duration if you don't apply it right at the beginning. And you do have to ramp up. You don't start with Empower stacks. Maybe there's some trinkets that unlock that later, but I haven't found them yet. So you do have to ramp up to get this. So this is not amazing for this, although I have found a lot of utility with this and the Jester Encore ability, which allows essentially immediate stacking of Empower to get this out right off the bat. Powerful ability, kind of cool. I think better than the other payoff here, Malediction. And then there's a couple more payoffs here, or one more payoff here, and that's the Burning Stars. And this is a super fun ability. It's a big single target nuke. You can use it from any position except position 1. You can hit any target. It ignores guard, so it's not, ignores block, so it's not taking damage reduction, which is good because it's a very big ability, so percent damage reduction is particularly annoying for it. And it's a huge nuke that uses your Empower stacks, and it applies combo. I don't love that it applies combo, but its damage is such that a lot of times enemies do survive this roll. 12 to 18 is pretty good, but there's a number of fights where the enemy will survive that roll, especially if you're using Empower, which probably means you're fighting a boss kind of deal, right? Like one of these deals. So the combo is not useless. And I do like this. I like this as one of the payoffs. This one and the Burning Stars and however you say this thing, Emanesis here, are the two really nice Empower payoffs that I like, as well as occasionally the stun off of Abyssal Artillery is another Empower payoff. And then the final skill on the Occultist is Chaotic Offering. This is a super cool ability. This is another one of these stance abilities. So it does self damage. Level 1 is 15% self damage, and at level 2 it's 10% self damage. So you hurt yourself casting it. It applies a random side effect. Mostly these are like small dots or something similar. The most annoying one I've had thus far is a movement effect. Sometimes you'll move the Occultist off this, and then you get one Empower stack immediately, and then you get an Empower stack per turn for future turns, for 3 turns or something like that. I really like this ability. Super cool. I like the Empower mechanic. It's very different. The Occultist has a lot of good skills. A lot of them are a little bit situational, but a lot of them are very good. They have this character is just so fun. It's good versus bosses with the empowered bleeds. It's good versus trash fights with the empowered nuke, the Burning Stars. Good versus boss fights with this ability. It's good in like fights where you have to hit a position, like with Abyssal Artillery, like the back positions. It's good in the layer fight versus the general, where you need to hit both back positions. This is one of the few rank 3, rank 4 AoEs. I just like this character. You're good versus creatures that are weak to movement with Demon's Pull. You can apply some combos. You can pay off with some combos. It's just a cool, flexible character that's good in lots of situations. The biggest thing hindering the Occultist is their HP pool. You have to work to make them survivable. They like to be in position 2 and they can't really survive position 2 right now. For my position, this character is an A tier character. Requires a bunch of investment in terms of storyline progression points to get going. Likes mastery points as well. A lot of these Empower payoffs are only good or only really good when the mastery points are put into them, but it kind of makes up for the fact that they have a lot of really solid early game abilities that don't require much payoff to much mastery points to be good payoffs for the team, right? You have a bunch of the curses and heals and pulls in the early game until you get the mastery points rolling. Once you have the mastery points, you have a lot of good skills that come online. The Occultist is the last unlock. It requires level 15 meta progression for profile, but it's one of the really fun unlocks that I really like. So anyways, A tier for me. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this video. Please let me know the things you're doing with your Occultist. If you have figured out how to make, which one is it? Not Burning Stars, this one. If you managed to make Malediction good, I want to hear about it. Tell me what you've done for it. If you've found cool combos where you're using Binding Shadows in a team comp where the movement's relevant, let me know about it. I want to hear about it. And tell me your survival strategies for the Occultist as well, because I think this character is super fun, very flexible, does all sorts of unique things, really nice character design with this. And I want to hear all the ways we can use this character. Anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments below what you think, and I'll see you soon.